Yeah, I think, maybe it's obviously we're dissecting everything. We're constantly evaluating that, but we gotta be better there.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there, what I did.
As I was watching the games this past Sunday, there was one major thing that popped into my head, especially as an individual that reached for this man in multiple fantasy football drafts. Why aren't people talking about Anthony Richardson the same way as they're talking about Bryce Young? Why are people labeling Bryce Young as a colossal bust, and Anthony Richardson, who has a way worse completion percentage, has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns throughout his entire career, and has less than 1,000 passing yards in the NFL, doesn't get the same label? And it's a very interesting situation that I wanted to dive into in this video, because it's not as black and white as you think. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. We're almost at 1 million subscribers, so do me a favor and check if you're subscribed. Now that we get all that out of the way, work! We dominated opening night on Prize Picks, hitting on the Anthony Edwards free square and making an easy $75, and then making another $150 on my Hauser LeBron James picks. We had a lot of NFL success as well, all in all making about $400 over the past week. Now, if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code Mikerophone to get a free $50 when you make an entry of $5 or more. I give away my picks for free on Instagram at @TheFlightMike or Snapchat at FlightMikeSnap, and thank you Prize Picks for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The 2023 NFL draft, man, is shaping out to be one of the most unique NFL drafts I think I've ever seen. You have the Carolina Panthers gutting out their entire future, trading DJ Moore, multiple draft picks, including this past year's #1 overall pick for Bryce Young, who looks like a horrific mistake so far. Then you have the Houston Texans that drafted CJ Stroud with the #2 overall pick, and then traded up to #3 overall to select Will Anderson Jr., who looks like one of the best defensive players in the NFL. So far throughout 8 games, this guy has 7.5 sacks, and it looks like they made the right decision selecting him, because he's already made All-Pro in his first season in the NFL, and he's already beaten his sack total from last season in the NFL. I mean, it's truly remarkable when you take a look at what the Houston Texans have been able to do following the Jack Easterby era, moving on from Deshaun Watson and getting 3 first-round picks, not only hitting on the players that they trade up for, but also hitting on their third-round picks. Players like Tank Dell, for instance. Even though they recently dealt with an injury to Stephon Diggs that was a non-contact injury, the future looks incredibly bright for the Houston Texans, and they are the blueprint for a rebuilding football team or a retooling football team. Take advantage of a desperate team, get multiple draft picks from incompetent franchise, and develop into one of the superpowers in the NFL, which I believe they will very, very soon. The #5 overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft was a stud as well. Devin Witherspoon was a home run of a pick by the Seattle Seahawks, but sandwiched between CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, and Devin Witherspoon is one of the biggest question marks in the entire NFL draft, and that is Anthony Richardson. Coming out of the NFL draft, many people looked at Anthony Richardson and said, "Oh my God, he's the next coming of Patrick Mahomes! He can throw the ball 50 yards! He's the next coming of Patrick Mahomes!" And honestly, it was very difficult not to look at footage from Anthony Richardson at Florida and not get very excited about this young man. I mean, the guy had a cannon of an arm. He was a dual threat QB who had tremendous strength and athletic ability, who was very difficult to tackle, but sometimes could be very inaccurate. Pretty much, he was the next coming of Cam Newton. That's the way I saw him. But the Indianapolis Colts had the ideal scheme for Anthony Richardson to thrive in. They hired Shane Steichen that created a remarkable offense around Jalen Hurts as the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles when they became NFC champions the year prior. They had Jonathan Taylor, who was in a bit of a contract dispute, but eventually that would get fixed, and they had a really good offensive line with players like Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly. Their wide receiver core wasn't terrible, it just wasn't remarkable. They had Michael Pittman Jr., for instance, and they also had a knowledgeable backup that was there in the event that Anthony Richardson would need some mentorship. The pieces were all there for Anthony Richardson's rookie season, and in his his rookie season, the main issue was pretty much the same issue that Cam Newton had. Richardson made his debut against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he completed 24 of 37 of his passes for 223 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. He also rushed for a touchdown, so the potential was clearly there. Richardson would get injured in his second game versus Houston and would miss the third game of the season versus Baltimore. He would return for his fourth game against the Rams, where he would lose and complete only 44% of his passes, but he would throw for 2 touchdowns and rush for a touchdown once again. Anthony Richardson was getting some hype as a fantasy football option, and then he would play in his final game of the season versus the Tennessee Titans. The Colts would win, but Anthony Richardson would be out for the remainder of the season. So the flashes were there as to what the Colts needed to do to make sure that Anthony Richardson would be in a place to succeed for his next year. So the Indianapolis Colts got to work. They signed an even better veteran QB as Anthony Richardson's backup in Joe Flacco. They extended Michael Pittman Jr., Zaire Franklin, and DeForest Buckner, and they also signed Raekwon Davis. They would draft Laiatu Latu in the first round of the NFL draft and select A.D. Mitchell to give Anthony Richardson some additional weapons on offense. So going into this year, the Colts were probably the biggest wild card in the NFL, in the sense that Anthony Richardson could come out, break out this year, potentially be an MVP candidate, and lead the Colts to a playoff spot. Or he could crash and burn, and the Colts could be irrelevant. So far, it's a mixture of both, and it's very confusing to fans, because if you just look at the statistics of Anthony Richardson, so far you would think he's a colossal draft bust. And I'm not saying he is. I mean, following his most recent performance against the Houston Texans, where he completed 9 of 19 of his passes, this includes him going 2 of 15 at the half, his head coach Shane Steichen said that they're evaluating everything and they're trying to fix him.
Yeah, I think, maybe it's obviously we're dissecting everything and we're evaluating everything, running the ball better, putting him in simpler positions, getting the ball out of his hands quicker so he's not dropping back, sitting back there. We're constantly evaluating that, but we gotta be better there.
Colts fans are a little confused because so far when Joe Flacco has played, the Colts have looked like a completely different offense. I mean, it's truly remarkable, but alas, they're sticking with Anthony Richardson.
Is Anthony your starting quarterback right now?
Right now, today is, yes.
Just you don't know for the upcoming game if he is a starting quarterback.
We're evaluating.
Okay, thank you.
And it's very easy to take a look at statistics and think that Anthony Richardson is a colossal bust. I mean, here's an example. Through weeks 1 through 6, here's charted off-target throw percentage to directionally moving receivers. If you take a look all the way to the left, Anthony Richardson really struggles when throwing vertically, and he's in the middle when it comes to throwing horizontally. And it's really easy just to take a look at Anthony Richardson and think he's a colossal bust. I'll say it over and over again before diving into my analysis on him. If you take a look at some of his plays, for instance, the frustrating part about Anthony Richardson is the plays that are being designed for him are excellent plays. It's just he's not able to make them. A lot of these are guaranteed touchdowns if he's able to hit his wide receivers on target. But alas, he's not able to do so. And it's almost always his fault. It's kind of insane taking a look at this. It seems like 70% of the time it's Anthony Richardson's fault. And a lot of these are very easy reads, especially this interception that he's thrown, which was absolutely insane. And I think that's what's the most frustrating part about Anthony Richardson. It's the fact that the play design is there, the play is there, he's simply not able to make the play. But the most bizarre part about all this is when you take a look at his highlights, the plays that he make are just jaw-dropping. I mean, we all remember what happened in week 1. This man literally made the throw of the season in the first week of the NFL. It was truly remarkable to watch. And if you take a look at his highlight plays, I mean, the potential is clearly there. Some of the stuff he's doing here is stuff that you don't really see a quarterback being able to make. The athleticism's off the charts. His explosive play potential is 100% there. He can make throws that not even Josh Allen could make sometimes. It's really just, as a fan of the game of football, it's just truly a joy to watch Anthony Richardson when he is fully fulfilling his potential and he's hitting his wide receivers in stride. I mean, it's a beautiful combination of perfect play design, perfect explosive accuracy, and just a cannon of an arm. And I can honestly just watch these highlights over and over and over again because it's honestly my favorite type of football plays to watch. He's incredible at improvising polarizing. He's able to scramble and make plays down the field. He's impossible to take down. He throws on the run. I mean, I could go on and on about Anthony Richardson when he is fulfilling his potential. But at the very same time, this man is throwing obscenely accurate passes. And then on top of that, he went absolutely viral for the wrong reasons in his last game against Houston. So the play is a fake screen pass, and the play completely breaks down. Anthony Richardson needs to shake off a 318-pound defensive tackle and then scramble to make a positive play out of this. It's honestly really impressive because any other quarterback that has no running ability at all whatsoever would probably take a sack, and for all you know, this could have potentially put the Colts out of field goal range, or at least made a field goal significantly more difficult. But because it's Anthony Richardson, he was able to scramble for a positive gain, and the Indianapolis Colts didn't need to potentially punt the ball away. Following this play, Anthony Richardson took himself out. The reason he took himself out was kind of embarrassing, to be honest.
Man, tired. I ain't gonna lie. That was a lot of running right there, what I did, and I don't think I was gonna be able to go that next play. So I just, just told saying I just needed a break right there.
I mean, look, the very next play was just a handoff, right? I mean, it was literally a handoff on 3rd and 23. It's not like you were expected to do the same thing at that point. And I think that's what makes this so embarrassing. I mean, taking yourself out because you're tired in an NFL game is absolutely insane. So this, combined with the fact that he has a league low 44% completion percentage, I mean, you combine this with other horrible quarterbacks, he's in the same exact tier as 2011 Tim Tebow. He's worse than 2009 Jamarcus Russell. I mean, these are very embarrassing statistics to say the least. But at the same time, you can make an argument that it's not 100% his fault. I mean, take a look at this play versus the Houston Texans. Anthony Richardson throws this ball on the money, but Michael Pittman Jr. isn't able to come down with it. Or how about this play? Play action pass, Anthony Richardson drops back, hits his receiver on the money, but he's not able to come down with it. 3rd and 10, Richardson drops back, finds his wide receiver. This should be a touchdown, but he's not able to get both feet in. And this has happened multiple times against the Houston Texans. And there's a lot of times where these are brilliant plays, but his wide receivers just aren't able to come down with it. And I'm not trying to say it's all Anthony Richardson's fault, nor am I trying to say it's all his wide receivers' fault. I certainly don't think that this is Shane Steichen's fault at all whatsoever, but I am saying that this isn't as black and white of a situation that you think it is. It's not clearly 100% Anthony Richardson's fault that he's not able to make these plays. It's not like he's refusing to learn the plays like Jamarcus Russell did. It's not like he has some sort of substance problem or doesn't love the game of football. It's a combination of him overthrowing his wide receivers, which are clearly his fault, on top of the fact that sometimes his receivers aren't able to make plays. In the case of Bryce Young, it's significantly different. If you guys remember in his previous game starting, not this past week, but his last game starting before he got benched, there was a play where Adam Thielen was wide open, but Bryce Young wasn't able to make the play. And as a result, Adam Thielen was frustrated. It's the fact that he was missing reads and just didn't see the defense at all whatsoever. That's not the problem Anthony Richardson has. In the case of Anthony Richardson, he's seeing the defenses fairly well, and a lot of times he's making the right play. It's just his accuracy is off. And I think that's what's the most frustrating part about him, because that was the number one knock on him coming out of the NFL draft. It's the fact that he was 6'4". He's 244 pounds. He's very difficult to bring down. He has a rocket of an arm, but his accuracy is very inconsistent. We've seen quarterbacks like this before, and we've seen quarterbacks that have been able to fix these issues before, and we've also seen quarterbacks that have not been able to fix these issues before. And probably the most prominent example of a quarterback that was able to 100% fix this problem is Josh Allen. Josh Allen in his rookie season was a bona fide running back. I mean, 53% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, yet a 49.8 QBR for crying out loud. I remember this is when the Bills were so poverty that we just assumed Josh Allen was going to be terrible. But in his second season, he improved from a 53% completion percentage to a 59% completion percentage. And before you know it, the Buffalo Bills swing a huge trade for Stephon Diggs. This, combined with Brian Daboll really helping his throwing mechanics and building an offense around him, boosted Josh Allen's completion percentage from 59% to 69%.
Nice.
throwing for over 4,500 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, and the rest is history. I mean, this year, Josh Allen is on a crazy run. He already has 14 touchdowns and threw his first interception of the season this past weekend. And I'm not trying to say Anthony Richardson is certainly the next coming of Josh Allen, because at the same time, the guy that I've compared him to coming out of the NFL draft, Cam Newton, had a much different career trajectory. Despite Cam Newton having remarkable seasons under center for the Carolina Panthers, for the most part in his entire career, he was a sub 60% completion percentage quarterback. I mean, yeah, his rookie season, he was 60%. His sophomore season, he was 58%. His third season, he was 62%. And then the 3 seasons after that, he was anywhere from 58 to 53% completion percentage. I mean, I'm trying to say that this could go in one of two ways. Either Anthony Richardson is able to figure out this one part of his game and become a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, or he could have a similar career to what Cam Newton had. It's very difficult to predict this because it really could go either way, and there's a lot of variables at play here. Another example of this is obviously Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was also a bona fide running back in his first season for the Baltimore Ravens, but the Ravens weren't really expecting to start Lamar Jackson in 2018. It wasn't until Joe Flacco went down with injury that John Harbaugh decided to completely change things up. So there's a huge difference between Anthony Richardson, who currently has the worst completion percentage in the entire NFL, and Bryce Young. One of them is the fact that Anthony Richardson has only played in 10 games throughout his entire season, whereas Bryce Young had a significantly larger sample size. He's played in 19 games so far throughout his career. You can make an argument that Anthony Richardson also had a significantly better supporting cast and a much more QB-friendly offense than Bryce Young did, but Anthony Richardson's also shown significantly more potential than Bryce Young has so far. So 2 days after Anthony Richardson took himself out of the game for being way too tired to play on 3rd and 23, the Indianapolis Colts made a major decision. It's one that is pissing off a lot of Colts fans. So according to Adam Schefter, a QB change for the Colts. Indianapolis is benching former first-round pick Anthony Richardson and turning to veteran Joe Flacco. Sources tell Fowler, ESPN, and me, coaches met this morning and made the seismic organizational decision to change QBs. I feel very conflicted about this. I mean, if you compare Anthony Richardson to Josh Allen so far in their first 10 career starts, it seems like he's following the same trajectory more or less. But that doesn't guarantee that he is going to turn into the next coming of Josh Allen. The thing that's really frustrating about this is the Indianapolis Colts were so quick to take Anthony Richardson in the 2023 NFL draft, but it seems like they really didn't know what they were getting themselves into. Anthony Richardson wasn't like a CJ Stroud type of prospect. He didn't come out of Florida with a completely polished skill set. As a matter of fact, AR-15 was electric in his lone season in Florida. But in his lone season at Florida, if you just watched his 12 games, even as a college football QB, that was absolutely electric to watch. He had 9 rushing TDs, 654 rushing yards, and he had just over 2,500 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He only completed 54% of his passes in his lone season under center for the Florida Gators. Now, the thing that's driving me a little crazy about this is you probably looked at Anthony Richardson, you saw his tape, you thought he looked remarkable, the potential's clearly there, but he isn't a finished product, and he still needs polish, and he needs to work on his accuracy. But if you do work on his accuracy and you're able to turn him around the way Brian Daboll was able to turn around Josh Allen, then you without a doubt will have a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And it seems like the Indianapolis Colts don't really understand that. They felt like Anthony Richardson right away was supposed to come in and be a superstar. They needed to get instant results from him. And while initially I felt like benching Anthony Richardson so he could work on some aspects of his game would be good for him, upon further research I realized that very rarely do teams go back to quarterbacks that they drafted in the first round and then decided to bench. I mean, the only ones that I could really think of is Alex Smith and Rex Grossman, Zach Wilson, but that was because he was injured and Zach Wilson was kind of demoted, Mac Jones because Bill Belichick liked to play musical chairs in his final season with the New England Patriots, and I guess you could say Bryce Young, but Bryce Young was benched, and then the only reason he got his starting job back was because Andy Dalton was injured. And I think that's what's really frustrating about this situation, because the Indianapolis Colts, if they did any research on Anthony Richardson at all, I mean, you don't even need to watch the games, for crying out loud. You can literally just look at his statistics. You don't need to do some sort sort of in-depth research to learn this about Anthony Richardson, they would understand that his biggest weakness was his accuracy. Just based off of completion percentage alone, you'd be able to realize that he really struggled with being accurate. But for some reason, whenever teams look at quarterbacks that have a tremendous arm and are relatively inaccurate coming out of college, they automatically think, oh my God, it's Patrick Mahomes! He's the next coming of Patrick Mahomes! But in Patrick Mahomes' final season with Texas Tech, he threw 41 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He completed 66% of his passes. He threw for over 5,000 passing yards. Yeah, there were some questions about how much of a gunslinger he was, but it was also in a spread offense. So what did you expect from him? I think that's what's the frustrating part about Anthony Richardson, because I understand he hasn't been what you've been expecting so far, but he's also only played in 10 games thus far, and they haven't been 10 consistent games either. He was injured 4 games into his career in his rookie season, so that's a whole year of his development that he didn't get. He finally got to play this season and was injured once again, and instead of trying to build something in the long term, try to build something in the future, the Indianapolis Colts are pretty much chasing the pot of gold here. The argument that fans are making is that the Indianapolis Colts still have a chance at making it into the playoffs, and that's very true. They're just 2 games behind the Houston Texans in the AFC South, but is that really what you're hoping for? Is that really the peak here? Is that all you want, just to enter the playoffs? Is that it? Yeah, sure, you might make it into the wild card, and you might possibly win a game. I mean, look at what happened to Joe Flacco last season. He was able to will the Cleveland Browns into the playoffs, and it was truly a heroic story. We made a full video on it, and it was really cool to see Joe Flacco being able to do this, but then the Cleveland Browns would get decimated in the wild card. And I'm not saying that Joe Flacco is destined to fail once again with the Indianapolis Colts, but I don't really see this team being a Super Bowl contender with Joe Flacco under center. So shouldn't you just play the long game and see whether or not your project QB could develop into something greater? Because he's made some tremendous throws so far. At the end of the day, Anthony Richardson is probably going to be labeled a bust. And a huge reason for that is because the Indianapolis Colts didn't develop him properly. I honestly hope NFL teams stop taking project QBs that they have no idea how to develop, because Anthony Richardson had the potential to be the best QB in the 2023 draft class, and just 10 games later, this team's giving up on him. So let me know in the comment section down below, especially if you're a Colts fan, what do you think about AR5? I like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.